we're continuing this process for a little while longer, this process that is a total of 90 days. So, a little less than a third of a year. Maybe this time of Lent and Easter and this period after Easter, this really strange period after Easter when there's all these happenings between the time of Jesus' resurrection, his ascension, and then Pentecost, which was the birth of the church that followed him. I've asked you to consider that this period, little less than a third of the calendar year, that this period really is a symbol. That it doesn't matter what you think about the literal truth of any of these events, that's not the message. It's a symbol. A symbol always means something and more than what it represents. A symbol literally points to a deeper, more absolute truth. And this symbol that's become for us Lent and Easter and these events after Easter that are just generally called Easter tide and the beginning of the church, to me, and what I've asked you to consider for you, is that they're actually about the maturation of the human psyche. They're actually about us growing into the spiritual being that we were created to be. But they're about those times in our life when everything that we put our faith in no longer works. When religious rules are hollow. When the emptiness that is searching for status or acceptance or accolades or whatever we chase outside of ourselves no longer feed us. Those times in our life when we wake up and we say there's more to life than this, there must be more to life than this. Those times in our natural evolution, our maturation as images of God, where we become open and willing and receptive to hearing a new message. The message, the kingdom of God exists now, in this time and in this place, that I'm at the heart of it, never to have left it. That I was intentionally created as a vehicle of love. And that my role is to express that love in this time and in this place. But to those of us conditioned in the natural world, bouncing around in this world, in our body, running into people and stumping our toe on benches, and life seems quite the contrary to us. Life seems limited and harsh. People seem unfriendly, sometimes cruel. And there's many, many things that happen to us that we don't understand. This week, to further that story along, I go back to the walk to Emmaus that I presented to you last Sunday. Last Sunday, I introduced this walk to Emmaus, these two disciples who, after the events of Jesus' crucifixion, are really kind of booking it out of town. When Jesus was captured by the Romans and was going through his trial, preparing for his execution, the Bible's pretty clear about the fact that the disciples all sort of skedaddled. They made themselves scarce. Here's two, sort of, you get the sense, fleeing Jerusalem. And as they're leaving Jerusalem, they're having this conversation about what just happened. I suggested to you last week that there is that within us, this only begotten of the Father that dwells in the very essence of who we are. This imago Dei, the very image and likeness of God that is the essence of who we are. This eternal reality that in Western culture we call our soul. this part of us that has never left the absolute, the infinite, the wholeness, is always there, and that we can dialogue with it, that we can open to it and experience it as a real presence in our life. And these disciples, heading out of town, talking about what this meant and the stranger that shows up, and they begin to ask the stranger, you know, how do you not know what happened? And they fell into dialogue, and the stranger explained their life to them. And so I invited you, when these moments come up in your life, ask. Ask the universe, have this dialogue, ask and expect a response. Today I want to carry this a little further and point out something else that I think that exists in the story of the walk to Emmaus. And I want to focus on where these guys were emotionally on the road. They had just experienced something that must have horrified them. They'd seen someone that they'd lived with and traveled with and broken bread with and studied with, and they've seen him arrested, probably don't understand why. They've seen him tortured, and they've seen him crucified. And it's obvious in the dialogue that they have no clue how any of this could happen. It's obvious in the dialogue that it's frightening and it's painful. The very destination, they're on the road to Emmaus. Emmaus was the town of the mineral baths. Emmaus was the town of rest, restoration, and healing. They're emotionally distraught, and whether they know it or not, they're seeking a healing. And in the midst of that, Jesus shows up, answers their questions, accompanies them. And when he sits and breaks bread with them, they recognize who this is that's been with them all along. How many times in our life have we had the experience like those disciples the weekend before? How many times have we had real shocks to the system that we didn't understand, that horrified and traumatized us? How many times in our life have we experienced things for which we didn't know if we had the strength to go through? How many times have we felt that, not just urge, but need to run? How many times have we found it easier to simply get out of Dodge? Run from whatever the problem, whatever the circumstance. Whether we know it or not, we're running to healing. But often not, we're not aware of that at the time. Perhaps the disciples were on the road to Emmaus just because that's where the road went. Maybe they planned to just keep right on walking once they got to Emmaus. Who knows? We